I own an astronaut rescue company, and first of our kind. I worked for NASA for a number of years, developing the astronaut rescue program that the military uses. I was part of an organization that kind of bridged the gap between NASA and the Department of Defense to figure all this stuff out. And then I started my company about 3 years ago, and started doing it for the private sector. So, for the government astronauts, the Air Force PJs will go and they'll load up in C-17s and get all the special equipment, and they'll station a couple places throughout the world to go and get them if something goes off target. But there's nobody to do that for the commercial passengers. So because I helped develop the plan, like the non-government dudes. So since I helped develop that plan, started a company, and I just fell into all the right people and all the right resources to be able to do this, where we basically have our own rescue wing, man. We got C-130 helicopters, really? Got freaking SOV-3 parachutes, got night vision goggles, got narcotics and all the different, space equipment, and you name it, man. I got a full, you go in, it's like a full team. We got a full team room, and it's like going into just a PJ unit. You come to my shop.
You had me at narcotics. As far as actually being used, I assume, or if you can kind of walk through the process of when one of these flights is going to take place and they have you on the Ready 5 or whatever it is, can you walk us through that process from the time they say, hey, we need your services to when it's done?
Yeah, so from when a company says they need our services, and right now it's really only been, Axiom's been the only show in town, right? So Axiom was one of the first movers. Well, I take this back. We did also support a company called Space Perspectives, and they have a stratospheric balloon, and they are covering a lot of area, but we went and recovered their balloon 150 miles out in the Gulf and all their hardware, and they're getting ready to launch people here next year. So we have supported other folks that are non-orbital, but typically what will happen is we get all the agreements in place, and then we will, 90 days out is when we really start putting pen to paper, developing a whole rescue plan. It's usually about 30, 40 pages long of everything about the rocket and the crew and our team, our capabilities, and our matrix, our, risk management, mitigation, all that stuff. We'll start putting all those products together about 90 days out, start staffing our team. Our team will ramp up to about anywhere from 40, sometimes as much as 60 people, from a full ops center to, the folks flying the planes, to the folks jumping out, to the folks in the helicopter. And then we have some other supporting entities on boats and stuff like that as well, actually in the water. And so pretty big team. So we will typically, 90 days out, we will do training specific for our PJs that we bring in. And this is where it really benefits me to be a reservist, because there's all these reservists out there. It's probably the same. Is there reserve SEALs as well?
There is, yeah.
Yeah, so you got all these dudes that are highly capable, highly trained, millions of dollars poured into their training. And when they're not working, in the military, what are they doing, man? They're firefighters or bus drivers, probably not, but, or they're overseas, in the shit, right? So we created this company so that we can employ those sort of folks that are highly skilled and maybe even recently retired, or even some active duty guys that are on leave. So we'll provide some training to these guys, and we'll train specifically with the customer, which in this case has been the Axiom folks, which actually they purchase a ride on SpaceX. We have an agreement with SpaceX. We'll take their capsule and we'll do a bunch of training on the spacesuits, on extracting them from the capsule, all the hazards that are associated with it. And this is what makes it different, why the Coast Guard can't really just sit alert for this, because there's all these hypergulls, which they use for fuel on the rockets. And it's very toxic if you're not wearing PPE and you don't have detectors to actually detect it, right? So monomethylhydrazine, nitrogen tetroxide, and there's other chemicals as well that if you breathe them in, it will, it'll kill you. So we teach our guys how to have the right detectors, how to use those, how to use the SCBA systems, how to set up all the spacecraft-specific GSE, ground support equipment. We have very specific stuff that we hook to the capsules and all that stuff. So we'll teach them all of that, how to use all that stuff. And that's typically, it's really not as long as you think. It's 3 days for us, but when I was doing it in the military, it was 2 weeks. How ironic, right? Private industry is a lot more efficient. So we do it in about 3 days. We teach them specifics on space medicine. Somebody who's been exposed to microgravity is different than you or I walking around. Their neurovestibular system's off. Like if you can give them some medication that will, make their blood pressure drop immediately, whereas you and I could receive it. There's just some differences to somebody who's been in space. So we teach them all that stuff. We have doctors come in and teach them all that. And then we just start prepping the equipment. We have, this is what's great about, it's not just operators that come in and work, it's all the support entities, the parachute riggers, life support technicians, all of those folks will come in and we'll pay them really well to build up all these packages that we have. Logistics folks, build up everything, get it all ready to go. And then typically we'll do all of our readiness reviews and a bunch of paperwork and boring stuff and safety stuff. And then typically 3 days before the launch, everybody will come in, the C-130s will come in, load masters will come in, start loading all the equipment, checking all the equipment, doing all their JI, joint airlift inspections, all of that stuff. We go through all of our mandatory briefings. By the way, we have adopted all of the military checklists. I mean, there's a lot of stuff in those checklists that were written in blood, right? And so we will literally do HAZDEX, just like as if you're flying and you're dropping stuff on a normal C-130 in the military. We'll do all of that stuff, and that's mainly for insurance purposes, because if something goes wrong, we have something to fall back on and say, well, why were you doing it this way? Well, we're doing it this way because this is the way the military does it, and there's a long history of why they do it this way, and there's a long reason why we have a checklist for this and this and this, and there's nobody else out there that's really doing this stuff. So we'll run all those checklists, and then we will give the guys the alert criteria, and we'll put them on alert just the 4 hours before the actual launch, put them on alert, make sure all the forces are out in the field. We actually have a boat that's right offshore anytime there's a launch, and that's because if something happens right on the pad, like the rocket explodes, the capsule will actually blast off and will land just right offshore, but the entire range around that area will shut down for about 25 minutes because of all the falling debris. Well, if you don't have somebody right there to get them when they land in the water, they could have medical issues. There's a lot that could go wrong there. So we have a boat actually out in the water. By the way, the military doesn't do it that way. Our company kind of built that TTP to meet the need of the range being shut down for 25 minutes. And so we have folks out in the water, and then guys are on alert. They're ready to go.